Good morning, Commissioners. Chief Moore, Mr. Tiefank, Madam Secretary, Mr. Inspector General, Mark Smith, Mr. City Attorney, Carlos de la Guerra, and members of the public. Today is Tuesday, July 19th, 2022. It's 9:30 a.m. This is a special meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Commissioner Briggs,
Present.
Commissioner Decker,
Present.
Commissioner Bonner,
Here.
Commissioner Kalanche, absent, Commissioner Sobroff, absent. Let the record reflect, we have 3 commissioners present and we have a quorum. Also present is the Chief of Police, Michael Moore, the Executive Director, Richard Tiefank, the Inspector General, Mark Smith, and the City Attorney, Carlos de la Guerra. Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We welcome everyone attending this morning. All public comment will be heard during item 2 on the agenda. We dedicate a total of 45 minutes to public comment. Members of the public will have 1 minute per agenda item for a maximum of 2 minutes total. At the request of the speaker will be given 1 additional minute for general public comment for a maximum of 3 minutes total. Members of the public who participate in public comment are reminded that they can speak to any item on the agenda or a matter within the jurisdiction of the Board of Police Commissioners. Public comment is your opportunity to address the board, so you are free to express your opinion on matters before the board and to generally express when you disagree with other opinions expressed. However, directing your comments to other individuals who have spoken or attacking others who have expressed their opinion shall be deemed off topic and your public comment period will be concluded. Members of the public, if you choose to participate in public comment portion of the agenda, you can participate in this meeting in one of a number of ways that are outlined on the agenda. At this time, we will go to item 1 on the agenda, the report of the Chief of Police. Good morning, Chief Moore.
Good morning, Commissioner President Briggs, Commissioner Vice President Decker, Commissioner Bonner, Mr. City Attorney, Mr. Tiefank, Mr. Inspector General. As I do each week, I'm going to briefly give a COVID-19 update. This past week, we had an additional 138 new COVID-19 cases. That is a 12% decrease from the previous week. Of those cases, the majority continue to be in our sworn ranks, with 98 of the 138 being sworn members, 40 are civilians. Within the group of 138 new COVID-19 cases, 81% or 112 are individuals who have been previously fully vaccinated. As far as at-home status, we've seen an increase of a 33% increase because of this surge in these added cases. We now have 452 personnel that are recovering. I'm grateful that in their quarantine at home that there are no hospitalizations within this group. That's an increase of 112 personnel. As far as return to duty, we stand at 1 additional member from the 2-week period has returned to duty. In regards to significant events, I'm going to talk about 2 officer-involved shootings that occurred during this period, including one that occurred just last evening, as well as briefly describe this week as MLB week, as All-Star week. So we have a number of activities occurring downtown. Very successful tonight, of course, the All-Star game at Dodger Stadium. These are being well attended in the convention center and uneventful from a public safety standpoint, and encourage the public to continue to come out. In regards to categorical uses of force, as I said, there were 2 that occurred during this period. First was in Wilshire area on the 14th of July. There, Wilshire officers were working patrol, driving the area of Melrose and Fairfax Avenue when there and monitoring the area, a citizen community member flagged down the officers and informed them that there was a robbery in progress inside a clothing store west of their location. The officers exited their vehicle and approached the location to investigate. As officers proceeded to the front of the business, 2 individuals exited the location armed with handguns. Officers directed the 2 individuals to stop and drop their weapons. Reportedly, one of the suspects holding a firearm turned towards one of the officers, resulting in an officer-involved shooting. That suspect then dropped his handgun on the street, fled on foot with a second suspect who was still armed. Both these individuals entered a black SUV and drove away from the location westbound on Melrose. The officers entered their police vehicle and chased after the suspects. They searched the area but were unable to locate them. The officers believed one of the suspects may have been struck during this officer-involved shooting. Officers returned to the location and were unable to locate the handgun that they observed the suspect dropping onto the street. A follow-up investigation has identified a witness at the location that stated a female at the scene initially kicked the firearm underneath a nearby vehicle and then later picked it up and fled the scene. One officer did sustain a minor injury during this officer-involved shooting. We're still determining the cause of that injury, whether it was a fall or some other action involving this officer. The officer was transported to a nearby hospital. He was treated. I'm grateful he was released. Force Investigation Division responded to the scene and assumed full investigative authority for the officer-involved shooting portion. However, given the nature of this robbery and other circumstances, the Robbery Homicide Division responded to the scene, and they've assumed investigative responsibilities for the attempt robbery inside the clothing business and for the apprehension of these two outstanding suspects. Additionally, the department now believes that these suspects may be involved in as many as 5 additional robberies that have occurred in the Wilshire and Hollywood area recently. The second event that occurred was an officer-involved shooting that happened just last night at approximately 7:36 in the evening. Yesterday at that time, Southwest uniform officers received an assault with deadly weapon radio call. The reporting party advised Communications Division that the suspect individual was armed with a black semi-automatic handgun. That individual was later identified as Jermaine Petit, a male black, 39 years of age. Uniform personnel observed Mr. Petit matching the description listed on the comments of the radio call, walking on the north sidewalk of Martin Luther King Boulevard, just east of Bronson Avenue. Officers made contact with Mr. Petit, who was in possession of a black metal latch actuator. Mr. Petit refused to respond to the officer's verbal commands, and a uniform supervisor arrived at scene, and upon his arrival, an officer-involved shooting occurred. Mr. Petit was struck by gunfire and fell onto the pavement. After the officer-involved shooting, responding units formed an arrest team, and he was taken into custody. LA Fire Department personnel responded and transported him to a nearby hospital, suffering Mr. Petit sustaining 2 gunshot wounds. He is in serious condition and is expected to survive his injuries. Force Investigation Division responded to the scene and are investigating this. No officers were injured during this incident. Mr. Petit was absentee booked for 2 felony outstanding warrants, one for assault with deadly weapon on a police officer from an earlier event, and the second one from 69 of the Penal Code resisting executive officer. A 6-inch black metal latch actuator was recovered at the scene. With these 2 officer-involved shootings, it brings our total this year to 20 officer-involved shootings. 15 have been resulting in a hit, 5 and a non-hit. 8 of these 20 officer-involved shootings have been fatal. Our numbers for last year are at 20, and again with last year's numbers being 8 fatal. Our 4-year average is just under 17 officer-involved shootings, and our fatal number by this time of the year is at 7 for a 4-year average. Moving next to our crime picture, we have seen an improvement of this last week in regards to the rate of violent crime here in Los Angeles, seeing a reduction in both violent crime numbers, homicides, as well as our total Part 1 crime picture. Briefly, we now stand at 205 homicides year to date versus 208 homicides last year. That's a 1.4% reduction. Our total violent crime has been reduced to 6.3% of an increase. That's 998 additional violent crimes in the city of Los Angeles compared to last year. That number last week was a 6.9% increase. So we've seen a reduction there. Overall, Part 1 crime came in at 11.3% increase. We see increases in all of our property crime areas. However, again, in this area, we've seen a slight improvement from the same period last year. Lastly, there was 2 individuals that have been widely reported as being involved in a series of convenience store robberies in the Southern California area, and also 3 homicides, one which occurred in the North Hills area of the San Fernando Valley. Operations Valley Bureau, the homicide detail, continues to investigate the crimes that occurred in the San Fernando Valley, which amounted to 5 robberies as well as a homicide. We believe that these suspects involved, either one or both, may actually be involved in 9 additional convenience store robberies or food stand robberies that date back to the late 2021. LAPD has 2 collective efforts on this. One, Valley Bureau Homicide will continue to investigate and present before the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office criminal filing applications for a homicide and 5 robberies in the San Fernando Valley. And Robbery Homicide Division has been tasked with looking across the entire city at similar MOs that these suspects were engaged in to identify other crimes that they may be involved in. Our work continues alongside our partners with ATF, as well as Orange County, San Bernardino, and Riverside County law enforcement authorities. I'm grateful for the unified effort as we move forward. Regarding personnel strength, we have a total, our personnel numbers remain unchanged from last week at 9,280 personnel, sworn ranks. Our civilian professional staff at 2,678. And we enjoy the volunteerism of 2,247 registered volunteers that work for the department in a series of various assignments across the city. That concludes my remarks. I'm happy to answer any reports or answer any questions, to take comments.
Thank you, Chief. Commissioner Decker, do you have any questions?
Briefly, Chief, you gave your COVID numbers today. For many months, we heard about the hospitalization of a department employee. I wonder if you have just an overall status of that individual.
Yes, I'm grateful that about a month ago, he was released and is at home continuing to rehabilitate from the just devastating long haul COVID that he suffered. By the way, there are 21 long haul COVID cases in LA's ranks. We continue to work with them and medical professionals for their full recovery.
Thank you, Chief. Nothing further, Commissioner Briggs.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. Commissioner Bonner?
Yes, thank you. Chief, had a question, just clarification on the OIS that occurred on the 14th in Wilshire. Wasn't clear to me from what you indicated. Were with regard to the weapon, sounds to me like one, we're not sure whether the suspect was hit by the officer's gunfire, number one. And then 2, did body worn or any other video capture images of the weapon, or is that still an open question in the investigation?
The injury to the suspect is believed by the officers on scene to have occurred. They believe the suspect was struck, but we have no further information on that, and he is still outstanding. The information on a weapon is from witness statements, and I believe we have a video account of it as well. We do believe that there's evidence of the presence of a weapon, of firearms.
And on that issue, I'm going now just to understand in terms of the state attorney general's role is clearly if it's clear there's someone who's unarmed, then the attorney general's got the investigative jurisdiction. How is it handled in a case like this where whether or not the suspect was armed is still an open question?
So as a point of clarification, if an unarmed person suffers a fatal injury as a result of an officer-involved shooting, then it becomes the jurisdiction.
Okay.
In this instance and in last night's instance, where we have a weapon other than a firearm, if either one of those were to later be determined to be a fatal officer-involved shooting, then that would become the jurisdiction of the Attorney General. We are in regular contact with them on these instances and work closely with them as far as those that they wish to assume jurisdiction over.
Appreciate the clarification. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Briggs.
Thank you, Commissioner Bonner. And Chief, with regard to last evening's officer-involved shooting, you used the terminology actuator. I'm not familiar with that. Can you explain what that is?
Yes, so I asked for a picture of it and was sent one, and we'll describe it as a cylindrical tube that has a role of a piston or causing a mechanical action that you would see perhaps as far as where it's used in an industrial setting. I'm not clear on yet. I do intend to publish the picture of that item when we update our press account on this event. so that the public will see it in advance of course, the 45-day critical incident video that will also be released.
Thank you. And Chief, can you give me a 6-month overview of efforts to increase the academy class sizes? In other words, any marketing efforts by the department, any recruitment efforts by the department, any efforts by the Department of Personnel to increase the class sizes for the academy?
Yeah, so it's a full court press. We're working regularly, meeting myself with senior staff, Ms. Dana Brown and her senior staff to improve the throughput of applicants into our academy seats. We are also have launched hiring initiatives, one being a housing initiative that Commissioner Sobroff has led with the board, with the Police Foundation to stipend recruit officers who live in the city for the first 2 years, a $1,000 stipend to lessen the costs of an impact of housing. Secondly, we've began a week ago Friday, a $2,000 incentive program for all city employees, including department employees and retirees, to identify successful candidates that would be in the academy. They would city employees that do so would receive a $1,000 reward or incentive, and it will be an additional $1,000 will be added upon the successful completion of the academy. This mirrors a program that was last used in the department back in 2006, 7, and 8, where we receive about 150 additional personnel as a result of that program. Lastly, in speaking with the mayor's office and with city council, upon their return, we'll be working with the city council to establish a hiring bonus as an incentive to bring additional recruits to the academy. We are seeing in the last 6 months a substantial pullback. While we, for the entire year, fiscal year, hired more than 570 recruits, which was the highest number that we've done in more than 12 years. We lost 600, and I believe it was 22 members of the organization to attrition and retirement. So we actually lost ground when you look at the what came in and went out of the organization. This was at a time in which the department had a goal of hiring 740. This next year, the year that we're currently in, where our effort is to hire 780, and yet the first 2 classes of this fiscal year are well below 40 members in each of the 2 respective classes. Our marketing outreach engagement has benefited by some earlier last few months reduction in COVID restrictions that allow us to do more outreach, more a hiring fair that has occurred in the Slauson corridor that I reported on here about 2 weeks ago, that had hundreds of interested parties that took the initial step into the hiring process. We are still marketing through targeted efforts with the personnel department and department funding for hiring, particularly in the areas of African American men and women overall, and Asian Pacific Islanders. The last issue is that we have also worked with the personnel department to establish a 90-day expedited process of vetting qualified applicants. And so that at the very initial point of talking with an applicant, if they indicate that they wish to be hired within 90 or fewer days, their testing processes and organizational resources are brought to bear to allow that to happen. It is my hope that every applicant that wants to be a member of this organization would have a desire for that 90-day process. I believe that the backgrounds can and should be completed in that period of time, and that we can successfully vet and identify able-bodied persons. So the efficiency of it, plus the incentives, are our efforts, and then targeting those communities that we want to see added concentrations and depth in our recruitment numbers. And then lastly, these recruitment challenges also exist in our civilian professional workforce. These are areas of equipment mechanics, administrative professionals, and others that we're seeing a scarce job market as far as applicant pools. And this includes also as recently as a briefing I received on our police psychologists, where we're down a number of people through retirement, and yet our applicants saw 2 applicants for the positions that so that we're experiencing some significant challenges in this area, and we will continue to work with our elected officials. Mayor Garcetti is very supportive of finding ways in which to incentivize and identify qualified applicants for city service, and particularly the Los Angeles Police Department.
Thank you very much, Chief. At this time, we're going to go to public comment. Thank you.
The first speaker is T.
Hello,
Yes, which items would you like to speak on?
all of them, please.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Power and strength to the families impacted by police violence. You know, it's unconscionable that this gentleman was shot last night. You know, the community is exhausted. We are tired of every day our brothers and sisters being killed out here. What are your de-escalation tactics? He didn't even have a weapon. Briggs or Bonner, whoever had to ask, and I even had to ask, what is an accentuator? Like, it's something used for industrial. Do y'all know that Mr. Germain, prayers for him that he pulls through, is a Vietnam vet that y'all shot? Someone that so-called served this country? Y'all shot a Vietnam vet last night. What is your de-escalation tactic? Every time somebody is shot, most of the time, they are unarmed Black and brown people trying to run from y'all because they know what's coming. You understand? This is unacceptable in our city. Y'all keep eating up our resources, 3.8 billion a year. You ask for money every single time. You don't prevent crime. You don't prevent anything from happening. And crime is going to occur when the resources are sucked up by y'all. We need housing, we need healthcare, we desperately need mental health services. And y'all want to give new recruits subsidies for housing when the general public can't afford housing. We're in the middle of a housing crisis, a mental health crisis. And things are getting exaggerated like in such a way because the community needs resources, right? Y'all keep eating up our resources. How are you going to give subsidies to people that don't even live in our communities, come and police our communities, right? That's unacceptable. We need the money. That's why Measure J was put into place, and those funds still haven't been allocated. We still got to fight for what people voted on, right? In addition, you know, what is going on with this department that y'all continually, you know, are harming our community members day in and day out, and there's no accountability. You know, when you come to these communities and there's y'all are shooting like you do, there's families and community members around, just like Rosario Mack when y'all responded to a mental health call and murdered this man, and it was actually found out of policy and nobody's been held accountable, but y'all ran in that mall and shot it up with kids and babies and families around, you know, like the 14-year-old Miss Peralta that y'all killed in the mall there, the other mall.
Thank you. The next speaker is Philip Tabby.
Hi there, all items, please.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just want to mention a few things. I do support our officers. I do support all the donations. I would like to mention announcing the next caller would be a great thing. Also, there was something the board used to do, and you'd stream it on YouTube during the commission meeting. That just helps get it out to the public. So if you're able to stream it back on YouTube, that would be great. Briggs, you had mentioned, you know, the increased class size. How can we increase class size? But are you worried about all the recruits leaving to go to other departments and also well-trained officers to go to other departments? That should be eye-opening. Week after week, nothing seems to change with the extremely high crime numbers. Homicide is up 27.6% since 2020. And this board is still not taking a stand for the officers when it comes to these illegal, immoral, tyrannical mandates that our city and our county keep pushing. The board thinks it's okay for 1,900 officers to remain on the chopping block while our personnel strength, our numbers here are decreasing by the day. It's obvious that you don't care that this experimental shot has a 1% efficacy rate, that the vaccinated, and I say that very loosely because it's not a vaccine, can spread COVID just as much, if not more, than the unvaccinated person, and that the officers are coming down with COVID. They're the ones that took the shot or the shots. They're the ones coming down with the sickness the most. The data is in your face. You know, it's public. It's public information. But you would rather play the politics. I know what's driving this tyranny. Biden's Build Back Better money. It's concerning that no one talks about the $1.2 billion given to Los Angeles to push this nonsense. They don't care about you or I. They don't care about public safety. All you care about is covering your own asses. Just like how you let soft on crime Monica Rodriguez have a major influence on moving Senior Lead Officer Contreras. The community has spoken, written several letters to the chief, with one being from some Tonga Neighborhood Council. You, Chief Moore, and Alan Hamilton are too much of a coward to admit you were wrong and the community was right. The final thing I'd like to mention is a situation last week where one of the callers blatantly broke the rules, calling out the names of other callers, but I guess Briggs is too much of a coward also to do the right thing. Man up. A letter was sent to the commission this morning. I'm aware of the 5 p.m. deadline, but hopefully it'll be published for public comment for next week's meeting. It seems many of the letters, and I'm aware that get sent, are never published. This board is weak and pathetic. The legacy will leave and be remembered. Your legacy you're going to leave is going to be remembered, that's for sure. Rick Caruso's our only hope. Sir, after you win, please clean up the mess. I yield up the rest of my time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Matios.
Yeah, it's Matios.
Matios, which items would you like to speak on?
All of them, please.
Thank you.
Just thinking about these shootings and LAPD's history of racist violence, one has to wonder why they're allowed to exist or even continue acting in this way. And today I want to talk about legitimacy, and the following is an excerpt from the 2014 U.S. Army Counterinsurgency Field Manual. Legitimacy can be seen as the willing acceptance of a government by its population. Counterinsurgency forces may achieve the objective by the balanced application of both military and non-military means. An illegitimate government's only method of controlling its population is coercion, which can be resource intensive. A legitimate government has to use coercion for policing power, but its population in general sees the rule and directions of its government as intrinsically correct. And this can be applied to the LAPD. So when we think about how the LAPD forces their legitimacy, we can think about community policing, hiring Black people like Chief Moore was just talking about, also just forming these ludicrous narratives in the face of ridiculous killings. For example, if the LAPD were to shoot someone after claiming they had a handgun, but they didn't actually have one, they may say that they were unable to locate the handgun, and they may even invent an account of a woman that kicked the handgun under a car and then picked it up later. Or they may make the claim that someone had something called an actuator that justified a racial killing. Another type of avenue by which LAPD seeks legitimacy is through these pseudoscientific sophistications of racial violence, like the extension of the 2018 Strategies for Police Innovation Grant that's on the agenda. These things, use academics and nonprofits to bolster programs like data-driven policing or smart policing, which we know are bullshit effectively and just a means of perpetuating racial violence. Now, the LAPD knows this. And if we look at, the data-informed community-focused policing manual, which marries these pseudo-scientific sophistications like data-driven policing and these counterinsurgency tactics like community policing, we see excerpts like this. This is from the DICFP manual. Racial and ethnic minorities may perceive of the police as lacking lawfulness and legitimacy based in part on their interactions with the police or other influences, social media, news stories, etc. This can lead to distrust of the police, which has serious consequences for law enforcement. Lack of trust equates to illegitimacy of police authority, which in turn leads to an inability for the police to function effectively. This is just plain gaslighting, right? It's a perception of lacking lawfulness. We have 8 examples this year of a lack of lawfulness, of racial violence. So this is just to say this legitimacy is constructed, it's false, and the LAPD is a violent, occupying force, a racist force. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. The next speaker is T. Johnson.
Hello,
T. Yes, which items would you like to speak on?
all of them, please.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hello to all, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I would like to speak about your COVID mandate for the City of LA employees. I have listened in on these police commission meetings and have noticed many contradictory and unfair issues. I've been hearing about this Biden Build Back Better COVID Relief Act. I would like the commission and Chief Moore to explain this Biden Build Back Better COVID Relief Act, in which the City of Los Angeles received $1.2 billion. That's billion with a B. How does this affect the City of Los Angeles and the employees of the City of Los Angeles? Can you please elaborate where the money is, how the money is being spent? DWP is included in this mandate. I have a friend that works for DWP, and he has told me they are not testing for COVID. That's 3,000 plus DWP city employees who are unvaccinated and not testing. Why is it that LAPD and LAFD are being discriminated against with the enforcement of this mandate? I wonder if it's because DWP has water rights and not the City of LA. Chief Moore, you had mentioned in the last commission meeting that there were 18 long-term employees, and today you mentioned now there are 21 long-term COVID employees. Can you please confirm if these are vaccine-related injuries? Every commission meeting, I hear Chief Moore's COVID impact report, and every week the vaccinated sickness percentage rate increases. The sickness percentage rate in the vaccinated is tremendously higher compared to the unvaccinated. As this percentage rate is given by Chief Moore, I watched a blank stare of all the commissioners and the city attorney. Why is it that none of you ask questions regarding the high sickness rate of the vaccinated compared to the low sickness rate of the unvaccinated? Is this really about public safety? If so, then why are the unvaccinated only required to test when the vaccinated have a much higher rate of COVID-infected sickness? It really should be a requirement for all city employees to test. At this rate, only the vaccinated should be testing by the numbers Chief Moore is giving. I would like the commissioners to speak on these issues in the next commission meeting. It really shows the actual goal here. It's not about public safety. This mandate has been outdated for a long time and has proven outdated with all the current science and failed actions by the City of Los Angeles. Thank you for your time, and please be safe out there. I yield back the rest of my time.
Thank you. The next speaker is W. Blower.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, which items would you like to speak on?
All of them, please.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I would like to follow up with my statements from last week. As we all know, COVID is consistently changing and we are learning more about it each day. Why is the City of Los Angeles mandate not reflecting these changes? Let me explain. Almost 1 year ago, July the 27th, 2021, the mayor and Council President Martinez addressed the City of Los Angeles. Council President Martinez stated, "This is truly a pandemic of the unvaccinated. 99% of COVID cases and deaths are among the unvaccinated individuals." Last year, the mayor stated, "We need to act to save lives." And within 1 month, they've seen COVID cases triple. If you recall the chief's reportings, he said today, 138 new cases, breaks down to 81% are fully vaccinated. That means 112 unvaccinated versus 26 unvaccinated got COVID. This works out to the vaccinated getting COVID 5 times higher than the unvaccinated. The mayor went along to say that 97% of people are dying from COVID that are unvaccinated. The mayor assured us that during every step of this pandemic, your city is making decisions guided by data and science. The mayor also praised Portugal with their proactive steps with COVID, testing, masking, vaccinations. Let's look at Portugal today. They are over 90% vaccinated. They have the world's second highest infection rate, the 5th highest death rate, and hospitalizations are on the rise. Let's start connecting the dots. Mayor Garcetti, is the city still making decisions guided by data and science? These are just a few examples of why your mandate is obsolete. In the United States, we have a overcounting bias due to a perverse financial incentives by the United States government. What I'm referring to, yes, is the Biden Build Back Better money the city has received in the sum of $1.2 billion. COVID deaths have been documented by the CDC to have been inaccurately reported and included as COVID deaths when it shouldn't be. Today, the chief of police reported on his COVID. your current year to date of the vaccinated. Listen up, 72.64% of your positive cases in your department are from the fully vaccinated. Chief, I still need those 6 other dates that I requested so my data can be accurate. I can respect and admire your support of the mayor in something you may or may not personally believe in. This line needs to be drawn at some point when your support is affecting other people's health. This vaccine mandate, it has nothing to do with public safety. This previous caller spoke about your legacy. This mandate about the mayor was created by the mayor and city council. However, this is driven by propaganda and fear being used to force people to take in this experimental vaccine. 20 to 30 years from now, the years 2020 and 2022 will be documented in history books. My question to all of you is, how do you want your name mentioned in these history books?
Thank you. The next speaker is Steve Rogers.
Good morning.
Good morning. Which items would you like to speak on?
All of them, please.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'll second what W. Blower just reported. Those are important words. Let me just add this. 1,900 officers are sidelined because of a vaccine mandate. If that's true, then really this policy has blood on its hands, because police matter, and the presence of police does prevent and stop crime. That's just common sense. As the numbers go down, the LAPD is imploding. 9,280 for a city this size is outrageous. It makes the city unsafe. It makes the citizens, the residents, unsafe. You have to look at reducing the fear and incidence of crime. Chief Moore tries to put a happy face on the numbers. Look at the numbers yourselves. I see all red. And by the way, the rape statistic probably is not accurate. That's what brings down the violent crime numbers. Take that out of it and you'll see what the true numbers are. Look at homicides, look at motor vehicle theft. Then why don't we have hate crimes documented? You have ghost guns documented now, so that's an addition. You can make changes. What we need is transparency, accountability, and truth. So let's get those hate crime numbers. And I don't look at people as black, white, but since you like to play that game and divide people by race, which is racist, quite frankly, why don't we look at the demographics of criminals on crime reports? We keep asking for that information and it's never provided. Let's see what the demographics are that are provided by the victims of crime. That's who you should be concerned about. And then let's see how that corresponds to the information, the data on stops, pedestrian stops, vehicle stops. Let's look at reality wherever it falls. Let me make a quotation here. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. Last week, I was attacked by name by Haram, who had time left using the F word. I don't know what kind of standards you have here, but if you're going to read the policy and talk about how attacks on others will conclude your public statement, then that's what should happen. Betty Lay was also mentioned. Now, that is outrageous, and you will be receiving a letter regarding that issue. It's really incumbent upon you to follow your own rules. The rules have to be consistent. The law has to be enforced equally, okay? Not some people are cut off and other people are not. I don't know I can't tell what the reason was and why you let somebody go on for 20 seconds more after a clear violation of your own public comment policy. So everyone is equal and everyone should be treated equally. I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I pray for all.
The next speaker is Baba Akili.
Yes, my name's Akili with BLMLA, and it seems like the first option of the LAPD is to shoot first and then ask questions or make a report. That pattern has existed in our community for too long. What happened last night is an example of that, was to shoot first and then ask the questions. You all make constant reference to this de-escalation policy that you have, but you rarely, if ever, use it. So why even have it? It's not a useful policy in the first place. And this is a common approach that has existed throughout the LAPD's history, particularly in our community, where the perception of us first as a threat, then the actions that follow. And usually that action that follows is devastating. And we usually wind up dead, which is one of the reasons why we have opposed all these unnecessary stops and engagements. What happened last night is a classic example of what the LAPD does in our communities. They come into a situation, they don't de-escalate or really try to find out. And what real threat was posed to the point where you had to use deadly force in the beginning, not to try to assess the situation and step back. What are the names of the officers who were involved? Will there be, and there usually isn't, any real accountability for the shootings that have been happening? And finally, when will you all quit hiding behind this 45-minute call in and open up and return to in-person sessions so that we can share our positions and thinking on all the items, not just one item. So first, we're looking for accountability. Second, we are looking for the use of this so-called de-escalation policy. And then thirdly, we are demanding that there be some level of full investigation that happens in a timely manner, because too often what happens with these investigations is they take anywhere from a year to 18 months. And by that time, most of it in hopes that the public forgets. So we're asking for a timely report back on all these shootings. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. The next speaker, Betty Lay.
Good morning.
Good morning. Which items would you like to speak on?
Chief's report, public comment, and agenda items, please.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, first off, I support LAPD. I support Chief Moore's report. I also support agenda items A, B, C, D, and E. And as of last week, yes, I was attacked verbally with foul language, and the speaker was not taken off the speaker. I had emailed a letter to commissioners, but it was never addressed. Not only attacked me, also attacked Steve Rogers as well. Apparently, some of these people don't have respect for themselves or understand how to speak without profanity. I would really appreciate the commissioners to practice their policy and, you know, ban these people that can't speak with respect. With that, I'm going to yield the rest of my time. Please stay safe and healthy. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Paula Miner.
Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Which items would you like to speak on?
All of them, please.
Thank you.
Yeah, based on the number of recent LAPD questionable shootings, it seems that LAPD is increasing its harmful, violent approach to resolving situations. These actions, again, are demonstrating the LAPD warrior mentality, where they intend to harm and kill, not to protect and serve. And so the shooting that occurred last night, there were so many neighborhood witnesses around that information was on social media last night. The indication was that the man shot was suffering a mental crisis. And again, LAPD's approach is, if there is a mental health issue, the first thing to do is to shoot them. I think this commission needs to counteract this negativity by requesting that the city of Los Angeles become one of the first cities to start using 988, where citizens can call whenever there is a mental crisis, can call an alternative to the killer cops that LAPD, sends whenever someone is having a mental health issue. And so I again also want to second what was said about the lack of de-escalation. The first thing that happens is shooting. And despite all of Chief Moore's claims of de-escalation policies, the printing of the large de-escalation book, apparently the rank and file don't get to see that material. They don't get to use that information because they don't de-escalate. And this indicates that either Chief Moore has a severe lack of command, a severe lack of authority. He can't get that information to them, or maybe he just says what he needs to say in front of the commission and in front of the public to, to kind of placate everyone, to pretend that things are going on. So anyhow, the harm that LAPD is doing must end. This commission must stop being the rubber stamp, do nothing, lame duck group that we have to suffer with for the next few months, and speak out against the violence, ask for de-escalation. Also, we are requesting that if you're not going to in-person meetings, that the total number of callers who have called in and are waiting should all be allowed to speak. This 45 minutes is an arbitrary amount of time. It's self-serving, and it is only good for the commission. It is not good for the community. I waive the rest of my time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Julia.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes. Which items would you like to speak on?
All of them, please.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So I'm a teacher, and this is actually my first time able to call in because I am on summer break. And this meeting is uniquely scheduled for a time when most people are at work. And I'm calling in because I think it's really important that you hear from someone. You guys all talk about being defunded and it being the horrors, and you can't get people to be police officers anymore. And my God, these last 3 years of being a teacher, watching you all suck up all of our resources, I have to tell you, I have lost so many students. I have lost so many teachers, good teachers. You're talking about giving housing to police officers who do not live here? You should be ashamed of yourselves. Every dollar that you take from this city is a dollar that comes out of my students. That is their experience that you are taking away from. People who shoot people, people who immediately do that before they do anything else. De-escalation. This is the fucking laughing stock, an absolute laughing stock. What de-escalation? What de-escalation? Truly, you say it, but then you don't actually have any examples of it. If I was giving a freaking lesson on de-escalation, you would give examples of it. That is like common. You don't do any of that. Where are these examples of de-escalation? Immediately, the first instinct of a police officer is to shoot someone in a mental health crisis. That is appalling. This is an absolute scam, this meeting, this board. I don't know what you all think you are doing, but you just continue to work as someone who just allows for this violence to continue. Again, also, I want to make a note on this ridiculous public comment holdup. One, I would never assign or ask students to give questions before I explain the assignment. I would only do that if I was uninterested in hearing those kids' questions. And that is what you're doing here. It is obvious. It's not even like really good. It's not even good for like faking that you care about us. Like, it's just in the structure of what you have designed. It is a continuation of naming things that do not happen within your department, like de-escalation, saying that you want to hear people's voices when you schedule these meetings and these public comments for times when no one is able to call in. You take all of my students' money. I want you to know that $8 million a goddamn day, $8 million, that could be used for so many things in education.
Thank you. The next speaker is Christian.
All items, please.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm just calling as a concerned community member. I'm a mom. I am very concerned about the rise in crime. I think LAPD, although I support them and I think it's wonderful that they risk their lives every day, but they need to do better. And it comes from the top down, starting with Chief Moore. Something needs to change because families are scared. They're leaving for various reasons, but one of them is because of the crime. We feel like we can't even take our kids to the park, go to the store. There is a double standard you guys are setting that, you know, people can call in here and violate the rules that you have set out. And because they're a certain color, you won't cut them off. But yet, if another color says something, you cut them off right away. They said racist things. They attacked Steve Rogers and Betty Lay. This needs to be addressed and you need to apologize and apply the rules for everybody equally. I think it's really telling when you guys want to celebrate certain things, but yet you're not putting public safety first. You know, you want to pander to certain groups when that's not your job. Your job is to keep our community, our city safe. You know, I don't even know what's happening with this whole indecent exposure thing that men and women can just go and just show their naked parts in LA City and that LAPD escorts them, I guess, because they pull the right permits or whatever. But this is ridiculous that we have to be exposed to this day in and day out. And the police officers' hands are tied. So it comes from the top down. You guys need to change what you're doing. Don't go to certain events where men are in bikini bottoms with cash sticking out of their bikinis. And your Chief Moore is speaking at it like you're endorsing this kind of behavior. Like, this is ridiculous. We don't want perversion. We want safety in our city. You guys need to stand up for what's right and do not force these vaccine mandates on the cops. And they deserve amnesty. And if you fire these officers, all hell is going to break loose. And this is just a warning. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Meg Connor, I'm sorry. Meg Connor. Meg Connor. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next one.
Hello?
Oh, there you are. Which items
Hello?
would you like to speak on?
Yes, yes. I called last week about my public comment not being published. And again, it's not being published. I honestly don't see the point of this commission if it's supposed to be the voices of the public and, you know, I can't even exercise my First Amendment right. I don't understand, like, when are we going to have the meetings in person? I don't understand why for 2 years we have had Zoom meetings when other cities have been opening their meetings to the public. Even our city council meeting is open. I don't understand that because first of all, the police don't even like to wear masks. They don't, I mean, I can't, whatever. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Gina Biola.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Which items would you like to speak on?
1, 2, and 3A.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Chief's report. Once again, we have to listen to you discussing COVID numbers, a 33% increase in your officers home on paid leave. 452 officers home on paid leave because they've tested positive for COVID, when you have never, ever taken COVID seriously since the beginning of this pandemic, as was evidenced by your refusal to wear masks for the first year. 10 officers and 3 spouses died of COVID. And now 452 are home on paid vacation because they've tested positive for COVID. This is just outrageous. 20 long COVID cases. How much is that going to cost the city at the end of the day? Are all 20 of those officers going to sue the city and the city's funds will have to pay because they got long COVID at work when you can't be bothered to have officers even put masks on, let alone take COVID remotely seriously? You began talking about officer involved shootings and then pivoted to talk about MLB week in Los Angeles. Go back. Yeah, go back. I see your face. Go back and replay it. You said, let's talk about officer involved shootings and then sidestep to talk about MLB week. You take none of this seriously at all. Jermaine, who your officer shot in the back last night, is a veteran with PTSD, a respected Leimert Park community member. Folks are speaking up loudly about this today. Oh, you are outraged that we call for abolition, but abolition is the only way forward to get out of this police tyranny and violence. LAPD is on another killing spree. There is zero attempt at de-escalation, and no amount of training is ever going to yield a different result because the institution is rooted in violence. The LAPD brings violence. They will never stop killing people because they have zero accountability. This body is a complete farce of a rubber stamp. You continue to hold officers in policy as they gun people down in the back and then wonder why it keeps happening. Wonder why community members are outraged and calling and screaming for abolition. This is why, because you will never stop. The LAPD will never stop killing Black, brown, and poor people in this city. No one is ever going to make them do that. Not this body, not the mayor, not the chief of police, not anyone. Officers kill people and get paid vacation. Officers get COVID and get paid vacation. This has got to change. The system is designed this way. We are going to keep coming in greater and greater numbers and telling you every single Tuesday that this has to change.
Thank you. The next speaker is Javier. Javier. He's not unmuting. We'll go to the next speaker, Q John Marie.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Which items would you like to speak on?
All of them, please.
Thank you.
First, I would like to say it is interesting to me that the same callers who are complaining about being discriminated against have described Black folks and brown folks in so many ways that I even stopped coming to the commission because of their racist rhetoric. And now, showing up, the footage, the shoe is on the, I wasn't there for whatever they're talking about, but now all of a sudden, they're the ones being discriminated against. That's interesting. Now, this nation has a gun violent culture. The men in this nation, we are sick, right? Most of the shootings that are happening are men. It is a cultural issue. There's violence. There's a spike in violence all over the nation. And the reason is because our infrastructure is not strong enough to be able to withhold anything. And so because of COVID, violence is gone up. It's not because we don't have enough police officers. It's not because of any of that. It's because of COVID, we know. And now we've had gas prices, we've got inflation. People are robbing because we have inflation. The infrastructure is not there. We're paying CEOs 100 times what we're paying workers and all of this stuff. Our entire society is messed up. So to come along and say, well, to preach the narrative of violence and we need more police and all of that other stuff, we've been doing this forever. It's the same old, same old. And the reality is now that officers are sick, all of a sudden, we seem to forget that at the very beginning, we were coming to this commission and saying, hold these officers accountable for not wearing masks in public. They didn't want to wear masks in public. Now their supporters are flipping everything around and acting like, oh, it's because of the vaccine. I'm vaccinated. I've been vaccinated and I've never caught COVID, knock on wood, since it's been. And I even at the gym, I'm wearing my mask. I'm one of a few people who still wears the mask at the gym. So I'm not saying it's the end all be all, but I'm saying I take some precaution. And if people would take just a little bit of precaution, even with wearing a mask, you could still catch it. But the reality is the officers haven't demonstrated that they want they care about the public. Even so, if they really cared about the public, something as simple as wearing a mask so they don't transmit a virus that could get into the public, they would have done that if they really cared, right? And so we think adding more Black and brown folks into the department would solve bias. It hasn't done this. Everything we're talking about doing, we've done before, and nothing has happened.
Okay, thank you. We'll go back to Javier. Javier.
Good morning. Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Which items?
Little technical difficulty. I want to thank the chief and the department for continuing to deal with an incredibly difficult situation. The level of violence that we're seeing right now can't be policed. It can only be reacted to. And I think that we take for granted how difficult it is for officers in the field. They have to anticipate what's going to happen on every single call, but they can't be there at every single call. And we have a society that's just out of control right now on multiple levels for I can't even say multiple reasons because we don't know why this is happening. But tonight is the All-Star game, and I just want to tell the chief how happy I am personally, and a lot of friends. I come from San Pedro. I'm born and raised here, athletic town that's produced multiple champions in every single sport, from boxing to and a lot of athletes. And as we go into tonight's game at Dodger Stadium, I saw that this pre-event that occurred downtown, the convention center, has been peaceful. And hopefully, because overall we're such a large sports community, that people will try to behave. And I know our officers are going to have to respond to difficulties, to violence, to problems. And I just hope that we're able as a society to get through tonight without something untoward and something terrible happening. That's the pattern, not just here, but everywhere else. And there are people who come on this call who have no respect and no expectation of anything positive for members of the Los Angeles Police Department. But thank goodness that we have them out there and they're willing to take not just the physical attacks, but the constant mental wearing down because they're trying to do their job. And let's hope that tonight everything is cool. There's a good game. Everybody is safe. And I just want to thank the chief and everybody that works with him, by him, alongside him, that tonight will be a peaceful night and that we'll have a good game. And thank you very much for all that you do.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary, this next caller will be the last caller.
Okay, the next speaker is caller ending 4578. Caller ending 4578.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, which items would you like to speak on?
All of them, please.
Thank you, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, this is Mohammed Khan with Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. I want to start off by, this constant killing and murders, the spree that LAPD has been on the daily. And, other speakers have spoken about it too, about this whole pomp and show that we saw not too long ago, just maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, with Matt Johnson coming out with all the drumbeats and everything about de-escalation, the use of force policy, and on and on and on. This is exactly the kind of shock absorber of the system that we call the police commission, how it acts. Because again, we are seeing this whole fallacy of reform on the move, where it continues to happen. It is inherently, it is not even possible for any kind of de-escalation. That is not the purpose for law enforcement. That is not why they were even formed. That's not what slave patrols were all about. And that whole tradition and practice and violence continues now with more weaponry, now with more high-tech tools, now with much more expanded surveillance. So the harm to our communities is even much more deeper and long-term because of all of these tactics. Which brings me to another point about this whole murder book, the homicide book project bullshit. I mean, here we go again. How much more money are you going to give Craig Kuchita, Bonner? I mean, Laser, we saw that what a failure that was. And now, once again, as Moore said, when Laser was dismantled, that this was an experiment. So here we go again with the experiment. And what's really laughable is that even in the report that they had filed, Brantingham, that name is familiar to all of you, and Craig Uchida, that the report even notes that, and I'm saying that from the report, that communities often associate unsolved killings with police involved. So this research will help LAPD legitimize itself by absolving police of accountability. Now, what does that mean? I mean, this is really, really a joke that you know that what your status is in the community. You know exactly what people think of law enforcement, but all of this garnishing is nothing short for this $700,000 money grab that JSS is going to get. And the intent to cause harm remains all the same. And lastly, what happened to the letter that we sent, where you had over 24 organizations sign in completely rejecting this proposed community police advisory board? So we need to know that what actions you have taken, and we need to know, and we need you to announce that this is not going to happen because communities across Los Angeles are completely rejecting these kind of actions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Now we'll turn to item 3 on our agenda, the consent agenda items. Are there any commissioners that want to discuss either A, B, C, D, or E?
Yes, please.
Which number?
B, I believe.
Okay, so we'll hold B aside. I move we adopt item 3A, C, D, and E. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Commissioner Bonner, go ahead on item 3B.
Sure, and I'll just direct this to the chief since I believe he'll probably know what this is, but I'm going to hope and assume that you know what I'm going to be asking. This is a collection, I think, of 25 late and some substantially late donations. And so just want to get some, picture. I assume there's someone between, that stands between this board and the donations who would be looking a little more closely or discerning to make sure that this doesn't happen. But do you have a comment or anything as to how this happened or what the situation is?
I reviewed this last week and noted the same as you did that there are some of these donations are dated late last year, early this year. And I asked him an inquiry about that and have taken actions with our chief of staff and administrative support bureau to improve the frequency of these coming through. As I look, there's a number of commands that supported or provided their initial request back in, say, February or March. And my question was, where have these been? And so there were some kickbacks for further information, but many instances, I think there was a misperception about pooling or pulling these together so that there would be more documents or donation acceptance that would have a group of these rather than a few at a time. So I've taken actions to correct this. You'll see that on this agenda today, there's also donations that were accepted that were dated in June and came through and again in advance of the use of the donation. So we're revisiting this yet again. My apologies to this board for the tardiness of this recent series.
I appreciate that. I think we had maybe several months ago, we had another similar, probably lighter conversation this, but there was a similar situation as well. So I think those, efforts need to continue because I've never asked the city attorney, by the way, like, what happens if we were to not approve donations that had already been utilized. I don't know what the answer to that is, but I'm just pointing out that if we continue to see this kind of unsatisfactory, handling of these, then we'll probably have to continue to look at, other avenues as to how we get the message across as to how they need to be handled. So, thank you very much, Commissioner Briggs.
Thank you, Commissioner Bonner. At this time, Commissioner Decker, did you have any comments? This time I move that we adopt item 3B. Is there a second?
I'll second it. Thank you.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you. At this time, we're going to go to item 4A on the agenda, the department's report with respect to the Detective Bureau. Can someone bring up Commander Eskridge and Captain Carranza, please?
Well, I see Commander Estridge in the queue, so I presume as an attendee, so I presume we're elevating them to a panelist.
Now what? Good morning, everyone.
Good
Can you hear me?
morning, Commander Eskridge. We can hear you, but we cannot see you.
Okay, we will definitely work on that. Let me see, start video. Okay, thank you so much. Good morning, commissioners. Good morning, everyone. Sorry for the technical difficulties.
No problem. Good morning.
Okay, the department has made active advancement efforts regarding diversity within the department's sworn ranks. Currently, the department has 18.59% female workforce. However, Detective Bureau has 24% females as our sworn workforce. Detective Bureau is fortunate to have two female commanding officers, Commanding Officer Carranza, as well as Commanding Officer Miles. Just talk about a little bit of the percentages in our division. In our ComStat division, we have 55% of our sworn workforce females. Juvenile division, we have 48%. Detective Bureau, we have 38%. Robbery Homicide division, we have 28% of our personnel sworn females. Detective Support and Vice division, we have 21%. Commercial Crimes division, we have 19%. And Gang and Narcotics division, we have 13%. Within the last year, some of the success and advances that we've had is we've had one female promoted to Detective 1 in Commercial Crimes division. We had one female detective supervisor promoted to Detective 3. And we've had one lieutenant promoted to Lieutenant 2 in Commercial Crimes division. In ComStat, we recently had a female detective promoted to Detective 2 supervisor, as well as Detective Support and Advice division. We had a female promoted to Lieutenant 2, and we had a Detective 3 female promoted within DSBD as well. In Robbery Homicide division, we've recently, within a year, had two females promoted to detective supervisor positions. That's some of the successes that we've had. Some of the strategies that we've employed is we have our employees and supervisors conduct outreach to female personnel assigned to operations. We've worked with La Jolla and different affinity groups to conduct outreach to females. to females and to realize Detective Bureau's opportunity for female candidates. We've also conducted ongoing loans to detective divisions. We also attend divisional roll calls, patrol, as well as detectives. We conduct ride-alongs with Detective Bureau supervisors to generate interest from females in being assigned to Detective Bureau. We engage female personnel during reports to critical incidents and in the field. And we also continue to have overall diversity training where we have symposiums or where we have different supervisory trainings or divisional trainings. We also try to conduct outreach in that regard. So we're on an ongoing effort to recruit females to within Detective Bureau. We've had some success at 4%. We're enjoying that success. However, we know we can do better in terms of our oral boards. Our oral boards have been diverse. They've had females within most of our oral boards, where we can do better in that regard. But we have ongoing efforts to do outreach to recruit females. And the fact that we have 2 of our commanding officers as females, that's great. So I have Captain Lillian Carranza, who has been a commanding officer of Commercial Crimes Division, as well as Gang and Narcotics Division during this 1-year time period. And she can gain some insight in some of the advances that we've had in Commercial Crimes Division, as well as Gang and Narcotics Division, and just some overall insight on some of the issues that we've had success in some of our challenges.
Good morning, Commissioners, Inspector General, Chief, Mr. Chiefang, and our community. I'm Lillian Carranza, the Commanding Officer of Gang and Narcotics Division. I have been assigned to Detective Bureau as a commanding officer for the last 4 years. The first 3.5 were assigned to Commercial Crimes Division, and the last 5 months to Gang and Narcotics Division. I am hoping to achieve the success that we were able to experience at Commercial Crimes Division and increase the level of female representation at all ranks, including the detective supervisor rank. Here at GND, it will be a work in progress. Unfortunately, if we were specifically speaking about GND, many of the Bureau commands were downsized due to managed attrition, 2 bouts of managed attrition. And the way that was done was last in, first out. Unfortunately, for females, there were a significant number of females that had to manage attrition out of the specialized divisions. This was not done, last in, first out female or last in, first out males. It was done overall. In addition to that, specifically as it relates to Gang and Narcotics Division, we went from a division of 259 employees to 149. Currently, we have 22 vacancies, and the hope is that we will be able to fill some of those vacancies and have qualified females apply and brought into the division. We're also working with other commands in an attempt to get personnel on loan so they can have the training and the experience and see if they like what the different assignments that we have to offer here in Detective Bureau. However, due to shortage of personnel, as you can imagine, the answer is generally no by the fellow commanding officers, and that's completely understandable because they also have a patrol plan to meet. And we'll continue to work with the affinity groups. We'll continue to try to get personnel alone. We'll continue to ask the Bureau and the office to make our vacancies a priority. We'll continue to do outreach and mentor individuals, specifically females. One of the requests has been made to the not the commanding officers, but the lieutenants, supervisors, and the females assigned to the unit to do their own outreach and start mentoring other females that might express an interest in coming to a specialized unit. But with that, you also will have to consider that these specialized units is very difficult to get into to begin with. And once you're in, it's so specialized. For example, the U.S. Marshals Task Force, we had a Detective 3 supervisor opening. There wasn't a single female that applied for that position. We had a D2 last squad supervisor available, and a D3 vacancy. And there was also not a single female that applied for those positions. Some of those positions take a lot of training, experience. We cannot very well pick out somebody that has not been trained, assigned to the lab squad to service calls and protect our community. But we can make those opportunities available on loan so they can experience it. As it relates to our fugitive task forces, it is a very demanding unit. At any given time, they go after the most violent criminals here in Los Angeles. And you can get that phone call 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning or on weekends while you're on call, and you will have to respond to that. And that is not conducive to family life for some of our employees. So there are a lot of factors that come into play and need to be taken in consideration, but we can definitely do better. And I am looking forward to the opportunity of expanding on our openings at Gang and Narcotics Division.
And we welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Captain Carenza, would you walk me through the process of an officer who wants to become a detective? At what stage in their career do they make that determination? And then what is the process by which they become a detective? And then once in the detective field, how long afterwards do they then determine they want to do something specialized?
That's a very interesting question, and something that I explore a little bit before presenting today. As you might be aware, currently we have 18% female sworns in the entire department. From there, once you complete probation, you have a choice of going either the sergeant route or the detective route. As it relates to the sergeant route, we see a dip, and only 16% of our females pursue the sergeant route out of the 1,992 sergeants that we have. From there, you see a dramatic increase when it gets to detective, and that is probably the highest representation of female sworn that we have at any rank, at 24% females. I would attribute that to, it's conducive to family life, it's stable hours, stable work schedule. But to go to and answer your question, Commissioner Briggs, once you come on the job, you complete probation, and then you start requesting loans or working specialized units that start preparing you for the detective position. If you're fortunate, you might have a commanding officer that allows you or nominates you to attend investigative schools or detective school. That in itself gives you an upper hand when you go for that oral interview. Of course, there's a minimum number of college credits that you need, and at least, I believe it's 4 years on the job. 3?
4 years.
4 years on the job as a sworn police officer. Then you can submit your application, and the application process is about your training experience. Then you are scheduled for an oral interview, maybe a written test. And during the oral interview, it's also a package review, a review of your essay. It gets scored by 2 sworn and 1 civilian board member. And then that is averaged out within the 5, and then they must be within 5 points. Once you are on the list, it goes in order in which you scored. And each rank is represented by a number of personnel, and they get ranked as to based on their training, their experience, their education. And once that band is published, it goes in sequential order, depending on how you were ranked. Once you are promoted, you go to a division where you complete 1 year probation as an investigating officer. And from there, you can decide to seek reassignment to a specialized division or to another investigative table, whether it's homicide, robbery, domestic violence, crimes against persons, auto or burglary, or even the gang investigative table, homicide. And then you start building your resume, your training, your experience, and that's how you become, and then attending classes, depending on what specialty you want to focus on. And then you start applying for those specialized divisions, such as gang and narcotics, robbery, homicide, commercial crimes. And as you can imagine, it is extremely competitive to get there. And in order to have more female representation, we have to continue to work with Training Bureau, who has rolled out an excellent mentorship program with our affinity groups, with my fellow commanding officers, to see if we can get some of those employees on loan so they can have the training and experience, because it's very hard to compete with someone in a poor position when somebody's already doing the job. In our case, again, narcotics division, some of the individuals that were promoted this time around are individuals that have been in the division for years, have been doing an outstanding job. After managed attrition, they were submitted for acting pay because they were acting in the capacity of a supervisor. So it stands to reason that once they come in and do that oral interview, it's very difficult to compete with somebody like that, especially when they have the training, they have the experience, they have a complete package, they have a commendation, and on top of that, they have been doing the job and getting paid for it. But yes, sir, we have a lot of work to do, and we'll continue to do our best.
Thank you for that explanation, Captain.
You're welcome.
Are there questions from other commissioners? Commissioner Decker.
Thank you, Commissioner Briggs. First, Captain Carranza, Commander Estridge, thank you very much for the presentation and the report. Very, very helpful information. Rather than ask a question, I would like to have some follow-up from the department for a future board meeting. I am requesting that the department chief, whoever you designate, work with the executive committee to develop more fuller data and potentially graphics about where women stand throughout the department, not just in Detective Bureau, but throughout. Detective Bureau, through its various components, has more than the 18%, suggesting, of course, that other divisions have significantly less women. Just mathematically, that must be the case. But I'd like to see how it is distributed throughout the department. Secondarily, with respect to the recruitment of women in the department, I'd like a report back on the either separately or in combination with the data from the department. Last year, monies were allocated for recruitment, marketing campaigns. I'd like to know how that money was spent overall, but also specifically how and whether it was spent to achieve gender diversity. And also with respect to hiring, where women applicants are throughout the process for each of the stages, and where they're dropping off or getting excluded. Again, I'd ask the department work with the executive committee to be sure it's a full and robust report and consistent with at least how I'm intending it today. And with that, Commissioner Briggs, I'm not going to ask any questions, but I would like to see that more thoroughly done. It was very helpful, by the way, Commander and Captain, to see the status of Detective Bureau, and appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. Commissioner Bonner.
Just I wanted a clarification, Commissioner Decker, was it your intent and expectation that once that analysis is complete, that you would share it with the commission?
Oh, absolutely. The intent is just to work with the executive committee to get it ready to present to the commission and make it public. Absolutely.
Future presentation. Got it. Yeah.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And sorry if that was not clear, but yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Briggs, appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Bonner. At this time, we thank you both for your presentation. I really appreciate it and look forward to the report back to us. Thank you both. Have a great day.
Thank you. Okay.
At this time, this concludes the regular agenda. We're going to go into closed session now.
Mr. President, you need to make a motion on the report.
Oh, thank you. I move that we adopt the findings of the report. Is there a second? Commissioner Decker, I don't have the agenda in front of me. Hold on. just a
Understood.
second.
May I make the motion, Commissioner?
Sure, please proceed.
Thank you. I'll move that the commission review, which we did, and file the department's report. Is
Thank
there?
you, Commissioner. There's a second.
Okay.
Subject to the request that was additional request that was made, right? Yeah, I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Commissioner Decker.
Thank you.
At this time, we're going to go into closed session.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss items number 5A1 and 5A2 in accordance with Government Code 54957.
It'll just be a moment, Commissioner.
Thank you. I think everyone is present. Mr. Chief Bank, can you read out from the closed session?
Yes, Mr. President. Commission's concluded its work in closed session. Related to item 5A, officer involved shooting number 044-21. Item is continued and stayed till next meeting, July 26th. Related to item 5A2, officer involved shooting animal 045-21. The commission unanimously adopted the chief's recommendations on a 3-0 vote. Tactics, administrative disapproval, 1 detective 2. Tactical debrief, 2 police officer 2s. Drawing and exhibiting in policy, 2 police officer 2s. Lethal use of force in policy, 1 police officer 2. That concludes the report out.
Thank you, Mr. Tiefenk. So the commission will meet next week, next Tuesday, July 26th, but the commission will be in recess August 2nd and August 9th. There being no further business before the commission, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.